What is going on, everybody? Welcome to week 5 of Look Who's Chalking. I may have a little bit of a Harvey Dent grin, that crooked side smile right now because we've entered my time and I act like I have all these tournament wins to show for it. But we entered the bye weeks where we have a condensed pool and you don't have to be filthy rich putting in 200,000 entries just to make a shekel or two. This is a great time for me. But honestly, I've kept my head above water these last couple of weeks thanks to the Chalkeroach, Kyron Williams. Despite the heavy ownership, I just couldn't say no in that matchup. And that was somebody that I went to. Gary, welcome to the bye weeks. Always happy to have you. Did you involve yourself with the Chalkeroach?
I think I built like 7 lineups or something like that, and I didn't cash a 1. Maybe I cashed 1. I made the classic mistake of going to a wedding the night before. I'm on West Coast time, waking up hungover with like an hour left to throw some lineups together, and I just pissed money away. Like a true degenerate does. And I'm excited to be back on the East Coast, ready to get back into my process this week on the weeks that we like with buys, 10-game main slate. Let's go. So no, I didn't play enough Chalkeroach. I didn't play enough of any strong plays, really, or at least strong lineups. And I am, I make the same mistake. I can't take a full week off. I told you I was going to.
There couldn't be a worse week for that too. There couldn't have been a worse week to only have 7. Even me, I tried to put in a bunch of 3s, because there were so many potential combinations that I thought could work. Now, some of them didn't work, but there were just so many out there that I needed to spread myself on the roulette board, and that kind of got me through. I came out maybe right around even, but a couple of those lineups came through. But I could only imagine if I only had 3, it's over for me. So tough week
not to
do it.
mention, we had the Aiden O'Connell, Dorian Thompson-Robinson thing strike down on late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. So you get 2 4K quarterbacks that some of the field wants to play, particularly O'Connell. And that just changes the whole thing up, because because you mentioned how tight pricing was, so then you think, oh, maybe I play these cheap quarterbacks and yada yada, and just traps that you shouldn't fall into. That I did a little bit. But you mentioned, we were talking earlier in the week. I think we nailed a lot of things on the show, right? We talked about Fields being a great play. We talked about the Chalkeroach certainly being good chalk. And I had my first miss of a Men's Warehouse, but overall, I think we were on the nose with a bunch of plays last week.
Yeah, Herbert, we thought 4,600. We even put that on the screen. And I'm telling you, we're going on maybe 3 seasons. I will not miss an A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith week. I just won't. I won't. I know physical matchups, outdoor. It's A.J. Brown. Who they playing this week? I'll let you know who's going to. I'll let you know who's going to go off later.
I'm excited to hear that one. And I don't know, should we just dive right in? Because it's a weird week where, Pat Thorman at Establish the Run does like the snaps and pace article. And he was saying he does not like this week. Like a lot of slow games, not too much.
Yeah, the professionals don't like this week, Eric, because people like me get to come and we can focus on the good games and throw some uppercuts.
The weird thing about that is we have 2 50-point over-unders for the first time all season. So, yeah, it's an ugly slate overall from a game environment perspective, because 8 out of the 10 games do look kind of ugly. But we have 2 50s, a 53.5, right, and a 50.5 in that Eagles-Rams game. And then we have a 49.5 with Giants-Dolphins, which we'll talk about the Dolphins when we get there. But that's 3 games with really high totals, which we have not had much of this year. Usually it's one per week. So, it's something to parse through.
Interestingly enough, there are many high-priced talents off this slate.
Yep.
Many. Allen, Diggs, Lamb, Pollard. Who else am I missing?
Devontae Adams is off the slate. CMC.
McCaffrey. Debo, Ayuk, all of those guys. Both of those defense, the San Fran defense, the Dallas defense. Yep. There are so many of these guys. Yeah, and then with some of the buys, there's no Keenan Allen, no Metcalf. I mean,
no Browns. Yep.
This is where the sniffers come to life, because if you can look at that small slate and say that's the right one, you're going to be making money if you can choose the games that are really going to blow up. When it's a carnival like last week, this one's blowing up, that one's blowing up, tons of them are blowing up, and you have to just grab little pieces from all of them. I feel like if you can really narrow it down in a week like this, you can make yourself some money.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you. So I'm excited to dive in. I'm excited to play for real again this week and actually put some hours towards making lineups that make some sense and had some effort put into them. So well, but on our end, I think we've had a good read on this season so far, and hopefully we'll keep that going.
Well, why don't we start with those two games that you talked about as the first slate with a couple of high totals involved. So I'm assuming that would be the Chiefs, Minnesota, and then the other one would be the Dolphins and the Giants.
It was so Rams Eagles is higher.
Yes.
But it's those three that have like 49 and above. But yes, let's start with the big one, which is Chiefs Vikings. I think that's. Let me look. I think it's close to a 54. Okay, it's down a little bit. It's 52 and a half.
Well,
Chiefs are 4.5 road dogs. Yeah.
When you look at that, no, they're road favorites.
Sorry, road favorites.
Right? Yeah. When you look at that game, even if that had the same over-under as those other two, it's just those names that come. You're going to see Mahomes, Kelsey, Jefferson. That's the one that the chalk lemmings walk to. You can feel it. Like that's and they're all stacking their lineups there. But the question is, if you're making Mahomes lineup, going back to your classic $1 million one, you weaseled the little side receiver with Kelsey and Mahomes.
Yep.
Or I can't remember if you had Hill. I think you had Kelsey and another.
It was Demarcus Robinson. Yeah.
Their passing game is kind of a disgrace.
I have a guy
in comparison to what they've been in the past.
Yep.
Maybe losing Schuster his 1,000 yards or 900 yards, it was a little more than nothing because it doesn't seem like Mahomes can find somebody to go to. And yes, he'll have Kelsey and stuff like that, but you need somebody to gash them down the sidelines a little bit.
Yeah, and I have a player I like there. Obviously, I'm going to like Kelsey, and wherever you could squeeze that in, I think he makes a ton of sense. But I'm starting to zone in on one of these punt Chiefs receivers that's trending in the right direction from a playing perspective, and that's the rookie Rashee Rice. And it's by far the most talented of the group, and he's 3,600. He's going to make my cheap wide receiver volume article this week that I'll publish in the morning. We're projecting for exactly 5 targets. And if you look at his snap percentage over the last 4 weeks, gone up every week. He got up to 50% last week. I think he's forcing his way onto the field. And I also saw a tweet just before. I think his target per route run rate is actually like top 5 in the entire league. So when he's out there, he's earning targets. I think he's probably the most talented. Well, take Kadarius Toney out because he's his own enigma of all these Chiefs receivers. And second round rookie, they traded up to take him. This is a guy that I think I'm going to start. I want to be. We talk about being a week early. I think this is the week I want to do it. You're looking to save money, correlation out the wazoo. So doubles, whether it's Kelsey and Rice, then maybe this is my Demarcus Robinson of my Millie lineup. He's the guy I'm taking shots on this week for sure.
I do want to say something because in a group text, I maybe felt like a semi-donkey for 10 minutes, but I'm still going to wholeheartedly say that you can't trust these other Chiefs running backs, and I will stand by Pacheco easily being the next most talented player after Kelsey on that offense. Like he's starting to get the run, and you're seeing what he can do with it. And he went off for 130 and a touchdown versus the Jets. And I think in this game, if I'm not making any stacks, you want a great secondary correlation. Everyone's obviously going to go with Kelsey, like all the Chockoroach people. I don't know if I can let go of this term. It's so good because people because people who go with the chalk all the time, you can call them Chockoroaches too, because they show up in the thousands. They never die, no matter how many you get rid of them. So if you went with Pacheco and Hawkinson in the tight end, because unless someone's running that double tight end stack, which traditionally doesn't yield many rewards for winning tournaments and whatnot, if you went with Pacheco in the running back slot and Hawkinson in the tight end slot, and those guys happen to pop, I think that's a good way. It's not necessarily going to be side door points, but it's not out the front door either. A couple windows, back door. I kind of like those two players in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you there too, and I like the Hawkinson play. He's coming through right now. You know, again, we're Wednesday, we are late Wednesday night recording this, so ownership is very, very fluid and is not going to be reflective of what we see Saturday night. But he's looking at like 3-4% right now, where Kelsey's kind of in that 12 to 15% range. Plus, you get the savings. It's almost impossible to recommend double tight end right now with how putrid the position's been this year. And I think that's what I'm going to write about in my leverage column this week, is kind of how to attack tight end these days with how bad it's been. We've had, I think, 6 total 15-point performances or more in 4 weeks of football this year. And I'm talking not only main slate, like every single game of the entire season so far. I think we've had 5 or 6 total tight end performances over 15 points. So it's been in half PPR. So it's been putrid. I would consider Hawkinson and Kelsey in lineups that have either Kirk Cousins or Patrick Mahomes, but it has to be very full-on game stacky for me to get there. I like the Hawkinson call, though. The Chiefs have struggled against tight end a little bit. We saw the Jets target both Conklin and Uzoma around the goal line last week. There was some success there. I like that call. Don't mind the Pacheco thing either, and I know you've been a Pacheco fan for a while. I do think it's performances like last week that force these coaches' hands. We saw it with DeAndre Swift in week 2, and now he's kind of had that firm grip on the Eagles' job. The way Pacheco played last week, very clearly the most talented running back, as you mentioned, runs super hard. And something also you were on, and I know you had a prop on a couple weeks ago, is you kind of started to notice when they started to use him in that screen game a little bit more. He's good for his 3-4 screens per game, it seems. And, that adds a little something to that Pacheco. Potentially you could pair him up in double stacks with Mahomes or the one-off play. So, yeah, I have no issues with Pacheco. McKinnon's the kind of guy that just makes my large MME pool every week because they use him around the goal line. There's going to be 3 or 4 games per year where he has 2 touchdowns, right? Like 2-3 games. He already had one. He's good for another 1 or 2. So he's the kind of guy that in correlation makes my player pool. But yeah, for me this week, I'm looking at Mahomes, Pacheco, McKinnon. That's my player pool. And then Rashee Rice is going to be the guy I take a dart on. And then Kelsey. And that's kind of your Chiefs for you. So
gotcha. And then I guess on the other side of the ball, I'm always later to the party on. I know we want to be a week early on a lot of players, but I feel like with rookies, I'm 3 weeks later. I have a hard time trusting them. People really tried to gas themselves up about Addison. He's still ranking 3rd with in terms of the depth chart as a receiver. Had like 1 or 2 catches last week. Don't feel
goose egg last week. Yep.
Oh man, that's even worse. So I get it. He popped some deep ones in some of those previous games. It's a little too scary for me. I'm still one of those guys that I fear, like the donuts from a guy that expensive. If someone's 3,400 and they pull that donut on me, I mean, I'd rather with Spider-Man there, KJ Osborne at 4,100 and hope that he snakes one and they're down a couple touchdowns or something.
I still love that's one of our better ones too with freaking Willem. Anyway,
yeah.
So I do the showdown shows with Cody Main, like I do the Thursday night and Monday night shows, and showdown's its own beast. And if you're a subscriber to Established to Run, I recommend checking us out. We break down like the showdown slates from every angle, but we talk about something on the showdown shows where the so bad it's a good play, right? Showdown especially, you have to get so unique with your constructions. Somebody's so overpriced that no one on the field is going to play them. That makes them a good play. A main slate equivalent of that isn't as clear because you just need the points, right? You want uniqueness. And I always talk about, we always talk about those side door ways to get exposure to that game. Addison's kind of falling into that so bad it's a good play for me this week because he's so overpriced at 5,300 that no one is playing him. Justin Jefferson's going to get 20%. Everyone's going to force him in. We know they're going to take a couple deep shots. He's what you see on the screen there. If you're watching on YouTube, he's 2 weeks separated from an 8-target game. And I think they're at the point, especially how disappointing they were last week, just squeaking out that ugly win against Carolina, that, they're desperate, right? They're absolutely desperate at 1-3 here. I think they're at the point you got to put talent on the field. So I don't mind getting in on this spot a week early. Now, he would have to be in correlation. So that means I'm not ever putting him in as a one-off play. He needs to either be with Mahomes or Cousins, or at least on the other side of like Kelsey. I don't think I'm going crazy, even with like a mini stack with Pacheco. Like I want it to be a cleaner stack here, but so bad it's good is kind of where I'm at with Jordan Addison.
All right, I say we go to game 2 because everyone's dying to know, well, who's going off on the Eagles? Who's it going to be? The first thing I'm going to say is I couldn't keep myself off the Chalker Roach last weekend. I just the way he's used in that offense. I'm not saying he's the best talent ever, but he's not a bum. He can catch balls. He reminds me of something like a younger Gio Bernard, where he still can move a little bit out there. He's a little wiggly, but in that Rams offense, you're getting 30 touches on the ball. But this week, I will not touch it. Everyone's claiming this is just going to be some back and forth shootout. All I know is I've watched the Rams 3 games, and every single game, when Stafford has to drop back, he's running for his life and getting destroyed. He got destroyed all game against Cincinnati. He got destroyed most of the last game. They coughed up like a 16, 17-point lead, and then he had to hobble his way in overtime. I'm talking about, you have to watch the highlights. He's hobbling. Like they thought they were going to take him out of the game. And now a Philadelphia defensive line that, in my opinion, is just going to maul that offensive line. And people are acting like it's going to go back and forth. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. The counter to that would be, everybody said that was going to happen against Washington, who, Hal leads the league in sacks by 25 miles, and the Eagles didn't blast him as much as people thought. But still, this Rams line, I think, is going to get engulfed. I don't care how many touches he has. I'm not taking the Chalker Roach, but I will tell you this, my friends. You saw Chase go off against this team. This is guaranteed a speed finesse week. This is Devontae Smith. It's so good I can't even make it my Men's Warehouse pick of the week because that's how much I'm on with these Eagles receivers. This is going to be a Devontae Smith game.
I really want to have like some sort of intro or soundbite for when Andy announces, is it Devonta Smith or AJ Brown? It's time for Andy Smith.
Somebody's commenting on my YouTube videos. I don't know where. He must be a Chalking viewer, but even if it's my comedy podcast, he comments, is it an AJ Brown or Devonta Smith week?
I would love a jingle, man. It's time to find out, is it AJ Brown or Devonta Smith with Andy Francess?
Where they're flipping like a coin.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a late night gag, Oh man.
Well, I'll ask you, can it be Goddard at 4,200 and his 0 good weeks?
I'm definitely concerned. I was just listening to Adam and Evan on ETR's like team by team pod. I'm concerned about how they're using him this year, but man, we get so caught up in these small samples. We're only we're 4 weeks into the season. He is still due for a couple big games here or there. I don't mind going there at all if you're attacking this game. I think he's probably a solid play. Just to hit on the Rams side, I mean, look, they've been in every single game. You got to give him credit. You got to give McVay credit. You got to give Stafford credit. And a lot of credit to Stafford because you mentioned he's been under pressure. This is a guy that's played hurt all of last year. A lot of people thought maybe coming off that Super Bowl, now his career is done. Like he's just playing out this contract. And he comes back this year. And once again, the quarterback elevator, elevates the hottest thing in fantasy in Puka Nacua, is keeping Kieran Williams' floor higher with his pass catching role. And he's throwing the ball 40 to 50 times, it seems, every week. You would imagine it's a week where he's going to have to do that again. They aren't raising his price at all. This is not the same Eagles defense. I agree with you on Kieran. I'm a little scared off there because the front seven is still where you can kind of get that. They're still good against the run and they're going to get pressure on. But Stafford has no problem getting the ball out quick, even if it's low ADOT stuff to Nacua and Higbee. He'd make my player pool for sure. And I could see this game busting. I was hearing it in your voice. And you're down on this game, I think, compared to the rest of Vegas and industry, right? I mean, the Eagles are 4-point favorites, 50 and a half over under.
Not necessarily on the, I just don't think it's going to be a back and forth, but I absolutely think like a Hurts stack can work, I mean, it's in LA, Eagles traveling to do what he's doing.
Eagles traveling west. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles have like a 10-point lead for most of this game, but the Rams are just hanging around enough where Stafford's playing from behind and all these guys are getting there again. And the thing with Kieran is like last week he was 30% owned. This week he's 6,700. No one's going to play him. And at the very least, we saw last week two examples of this, right? And it's the reason we've loved Josh Jacobs and all year because of the role. And he got 11 catches last week, right? Reason that Alvin Kamara in his peak, and it looks like he's back to being that workhorse, was so great because he got 13 catches. I think Kyren Williams is in play because
who did he get 13 catches from?
Check down Charlie over there, right? But I think Kyren Williams is in play because the field, listen, still one of the best absolute overall roles in the sport. They raised him $700, but this is a guy that's gotten around 30 points twice. Not the best matchup, but he got 28 points against San Francisco. Like,
I agree with you.
Volume is everything, and the field's going to be off it. Like he's probably, and now the field, even though Puka's up to 7,700, we're still projecting him for like 20+% ownership. So yeah, I kind of like the Chalker Roach this week. I kind of like it in tournaments. So yeah.
I love his role, and I don't think he's as bad of a player as other people. Like when I watch him, like I do see a little bit of shiftiness, like a little bit of wiggle. Yes, he is one of those, closer to a receiving back than he is like a guy, running through the tackles. There's something after that Seattle game and then the San Francisco game. Not to be like a curb your enthusiasm, but I feel like the Rams, they thought they were better than they actually were. Like the doorman from Seinfeld. They all of a sudden they were like, yeah, we don't have to play that simple ball. Like what they were running the ball and it was get it out of Stafford's hand to protect him from the offensive line. Then all of a sudden they were playing Cincy. He's dropping back, throwing every play, and then he was getting destroyed. And then the same kind of thing happened halfway through the Indy game. Like, hey, we've lost 2 in a row. We need to, let's get back to our winning way. Then they were doing it. Then he starts dropping back again, and he takes a bunch of sacks and gets hit a bunch. Yeah. It's just, are they going to be you would think against a team like the Eagles, they play like they did against San Fran. They have to, or I feel like this guy's not going to make it through the game. But I would not be surprised if the Chalker Roach has 6 catches and Lord knows what.
So look at that San Fran box score on your screen, right? 6 catches on 10 targets for 48 yards and the receiving touchdown. That seems to be very much in the range of outcomes here. Even if he's inefficient on the ground, he's getting 10 to 15 touches at the minimum. So, all you have to do is luck into a goal line touchdown, plus you get 6 catches, 45, 50 yards. And if it's a weak running back week, like it might be, because some of these stars are off the slate, hey, that's in there at 6,700. So I don't mind it. I'll be attacking this game. I think not. I got to see what overall ownership comes in at. And I don't know where I'm at on like Tutu Atwell and Tyler Higbee, like guys that deserve to be in your player pool based on the start of the season. But I think Stafford, I think Kieran, I think Puka, they all probably make my player pool at this point.
There is a somewhat inefficient running back who I think could be set up for an efficient week. And that is Joe Mixon, with Cincinnati needing a win on the road at Arizona, a place where you can win. Gets put up some good numbers. If you have T. Higgins out of that game and you're just looking at like Chase and Boyd, I think that could mean even more short passes coming his way. Obviously, Burrow's still dealing with the calf issue. I think this is a guy who, man, I was the one last year who said this guy, he looks awful every game. And then he had the biggest game in the history of games, but then went right back to his mediocrity. I guess any time he takes the field, he can be mediocre. But I will tell you this, in that last game, 14 for 67 against Tennessee actually isn't that bad compared to what Tennessee's been doing to other running backs. I just think in a game like this, he could be somebody on a relatively weak slate that could be worth it. Or even the other guy in that game in Connor.
Yeah, I don't know what to do with the Bengals, man. Like this is scary, the start of the season. It's really scary. They were perennial Super Bowl contender, one of the top 5 favorites in the league, I think, going into the season. Burrow gets paid to be the most expensive quarterback in league history. Then this calf injury, and just it seems like everything just falling apart at the seams. T. Higgins can't stay healthy, and yet here we are in a matchup with Arizona and another team you got to give a lot of credit to, who's staying in every game. Goes out and wins against Dallas, and they're competitive. Josh Dobbs has been way better than expected. But because these guys are underpriced and projecting well, we're getting a ton of ownership on Jamar Chase. We're getting a ton of ownership on Joe Mixon. And I agree with you that Mixon looks like a great play because he's too cheap. Matchup looks solid, and he looks like a great play. Tyler Boyd's going to probably be the guy that I'm most popular with in this team because we're not going to get T. I mean, he's saying that he's going to try to give it a go. I don't think T. Higgins is playing. He's only 4,500. We know anytime one of those guys is out, we're getting 10 plus targets on Tyler Boyd. So you want some money, salary saving. He's going to be about half the ownership of both Chase and Mixon. So I don't mind Boyd. The question is, do you have any faith in Joe Burrow right now to keep this offense fantasy relevant? We saw Jamar Chase, at least in that Rams game, compile his way to a fantasy relevant game with the 12 catches. I have no problem. I like him at sub 8K still quite a bit because I just think talent wins out there. But I just don't know how to approach this team, especially with chalk. Like, do I want to play into it? Curious your take because it's scary. It really is scary.
I would do it if they had the full complement of weapons. I think they need a win so bad, they're going to focus on getting the win. Like if they're up 10 points, just run it. Like, they're going to play the smart game just to get the win. Just try to get to their bye so they can come out. We know they're one of those teams who can go on a run. They might not lose one game the second half of the year if they can just get to a point where they're staying afloat. They just kind of have that type of vibe. But
I love them for late season. Like I think best ball, if you could survive in your best ball teams with Bengals guys, like if you're at week 9, 10, 11, 12, I think they're great. In one of my main event teams, a $2,500 regular fantasy team, we have a Burrow Chase team, and it's just going to be dead by that point. We're going to be 1-5 or whatever. And even when they start playing well, it's not going to matter. For GFS, I just don't think we're there yet. I do think we're going to have that help once Burrow gets healthy and this team starts to click. Their offensive line's a little healthier. I agree. Late season, they're going to be great. Right now, we're not there. So I don't know.
All right, so then let's do our due diligence. Check out that third game you were talking about. Could you have the discipline to play Dallas Goedert because of his poor start? But we're not that far into the year yet. I got a ballsy play, and it comes from your team. Now, look, I'm assuming, by the way, this week's Chalker Roach, I'm going to keep saying this like a song that's in your head.
I love it.
It has to be Wan'Dale Robinson. He's 3,000. Yes. Okay, I wanted to make sure.
Super chalk.
Well, if you want to take the flip side of that, don't even show him to us. We know. I'm gonna have to Photoshop his face and add a roach on it. Remember Papa Roach?
Papa, cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
Yeah, of course.
No breathing. Yeah.
100%. Well, this Giants team has cut your life into pieces, and Darren Waller might be your last resort because.
And I wish I was suffocating with no breathing when I watch this team. Seriously, I really do.
Look, I'm going to take the plunge this week because I obviously like the Dolphins in a bounce back spot to feel good about themselves. They get, that line got engulfed, didn't score much in the second half. Tyreek Hill had a bad game. Waddle had a bad game. I think this is, a game where likely Miami's going to have everything going down there. And if I'm going to run somebody the other way, yes, you can do Wan'Dale 3,000. He'll have his catches, but maybe, just maybe, Waller can finally have a breakout game. You're laughing. If you're going to tell me this guy's, that's impossible.
I just think it's hilarious to say the Wan'Dale 3000 sounds like a broom in Harry Potter.
There's a water gun. When I was a kid, there was a water gun called the CPS. The CPS was either 1,000 or 5,000. This thing, if you hit someone with it, you had a bruise on your back. I can't believe it was legal. They stopped making this thing. And of course I had it because I'm a prick. When I was young, I swear to you, I could hardly even jerk the thing off because that's what you had to do. This thing, I'm not kidding. It was massive. You had to have a strap that went over your shoulder. That's how massive this thing was. And while we're talking about this, if we can search that off to the side, and you're gonna have to put Super Soaker CPS and just try the either 1,000 to, you're gonna see one of them is massive, and then we'll cut back to that in a second. But Darren Waller was a piece of shit the other night. But before that, the 2 weeks before that, he actually had some targets. They were disgraced. I like teams that were disgraced at home, especially in prime time. A game they're going to have to throw. They're going to need any sort of points, whether it's in junk time or magically they somehow get ahead. Waller's got to do something.
This is a big do or die week for the Giants. Like, I'm not even talking as a fan here. Like, this is the type of team. They're coming off the type of week that not only your season could fall apart at the seams, but like the whole Daniel Jones era can, right? And like we've gone back and forth, and if he's competent or not competent, he looked bad. The offensive line is obviously a disgrace. But this is a team in the Dolphins that don't mind getting into track meets. This is a 49.5 for a reason. Now, most of that is coming on the Dolphins side. I think they have a team total of 30. So Vegas is projecting the Giants to score around 19 points. Fair, totally fair. But this is a team that has, gave up 48 points to the Bills. They give up big points and score big points. So I don't mind investing in this game. Wan'Dale's the only guy coming through with major chalk right now. Daniel Jones is going to project well because we've seen it with the floor, with his legs before. We don't know if Saquon Barkley's playing, TBD. Have no issues with Waller. It's one of those also things, like he's in his own price tier at tight end at 5,400. No one's going to go there. He's 1,000 cheaper than Hawkinson, but he's 1,000 more than Goddard, right? No one's going to that range. So I don't mind that play. The Giants did the smart thing of putting Wan'Dale and Hyatt on the field more than Hodgins and Campbell. I would put all of Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, and Wan'Dale Robinson in my pool because you get pivots to Wan'Dale. Plus, those are going to be the three guys that have your highest ceilings. So, yeah, all those guys make it. And I want them mostly in correlation, but they're all okay one-off plays too. It's ugly. It's gross, but, you kind of have to go to it for some value and potential game environment this week. On the other side of that game, a lot of chalk, right? Devon Achane certainly going to be the chalk-a-roach this week. After
why don't we play Mostert?
Yeah, I think it's fine. I think you should. And it's a little scary because Achane's role is really improved now. It's like he's forcing his way onto the field, but you're getting the exact same price and 28% early ownership on Achane and 3% on Mostert. So, yeah, Mostert's the very clear pivot, the very, very clear pivot.
And, no, that's not it. The 2000. It's the 2000. It's the 2000. I was just looking it up. Yeah, trust me, I wouldn't get excited for that thing. The 2000, it killed animals. Wait till you see this thing. But with this game,
probably bigger than Wan'Dale Robinson, honestly.
Yeah, and that guy, I don't know, man. He could rack up a PPR day. So
he's a strong PPR player, incredibly tiny, incredibly injury prone. He'll for the 4 games we have him, we'll use him while he's cheap.
Hey, you got it. Well, Sterling Shepard apparently is still on that roster, so
he's the definition of Udonis Haslem at this point for the Giants. He's just veteran locker room presence. You don't see that on the 53-man rosters very often.
There we go. There we go. That thing. And I don't know if because there's not perspective because you're just seeing a wood floor in a box. I don't know if you think that's small. It's huge. It's huge. Like there's the shoulder strap. You needed that thing just to keep it up. I'm not kidding.
What does CPS stand for?
Fucking kill pieces of shit. Kill with a C.
Water. It's one of the most valuable super soakers because of its sheer power, with its price reaching $200 in online auctions. Currently, it holds the record of being the most powerful super soaker ever produced, a record which it took from the older Super Soaker 300 and is held ever since. So, Andy, according to nerfpedialegacy.fandom.com, that is the most powerful water gun of all time. So you are not wrong. It holds the record. Congratulations to the Wan'Dale 3000.
I had it. My mom bought it for me. My mom was not smart like that. Like she gave me stuff I shouldn't have had. And I hurt people with it. Like if you shot that, they'd be like, "Ow, this thing." This was back when you could make cool shit. I gotta see. I mean, you didn't get this shit in the 90s a lot. Just a perfectly timed Polaroid picture. My cousin from Croatia was visiting and we're in the pool and I'm blasting him. And it looks like he took a chair shot to the back in the WWE where they arch their back and the water is just being blasted off.
Dude, this is no joke. On eBay, like ones that actually work go for like $300 if they're working. People sell them for parts to try to put them back together. This is like a vintage People are after that CPS 2000 still. I don't know what kind of damage what kind of deranged people are trying to use these things, but hey.
I gotta, if I can find that pick quickly, but I had this thing, and you just go to I don't know where I got Models or whatever. You look at that, man. It's massive.
Yeah, that's
a kid.
Absurd.
Like, how can you ask a kid to pump that thing? Unbelievable.
Oh man, I have Stevie Thunder in my Twitter mention saying that the Knicks should trade for James Harden right now. Everyone's fully off the rails at this point. All right.
Let me
yes.
scroll up.
Anyone else on the Dolphin side you like there? I mean, because Achan's going to be super chalk. Mostert's the pivot. Tua's not going to be that owned. He's interesting. Tyreek's.
Oh, what do you mean? He's my favorite quarterback on the slate.
Yeah, well, there you go. Only 7% in early runs here. Because now he's over 7K. It's not that easy to fit. So,
I think after a game like that, they're going to come out and I don't know if they're going to how big the beating is going to be, but I would imagine this is a game where they want to get Tua feeling good. He was under a ton of pressure.
Foot on the gas for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, he's going to be under pressure again. The Giants are going to blitz like crazy, but who knows? I don't think that it's never necessarily going to be successful. But yeah,
I don't know if we talked about this on this show, but I talked about it on my variety show, Francess and Friends, which got picked up for another week. I'm on a week by week basis here. Yeah,
Mazel tov. Nice.
Yeah, we got greenlit for another episode. But I talked about liking Derrick Henry. Did we talk about him on this show? I said I'm not going
to very briefly. I think not much, but I saw you were on him.
Yeah, well, it was just. He had two unbelievably tough matchups in a row, and I thought the Bengals were the first matchup that he'd be able to maybe exploit him a little bit. And the Colts, to me, they're in the middle. I know they got some good linebackers and whatnot, but I know Henry has had some historical days. And whatever you want to say about Vrabel, this bastard always lingers around 500. He's never going to go too far under 500. And if that defense plays well against the Colts and they're in a game script where they can continue to run and not have to throw, it's going to be one of those games. He's getting 27 carries. The big problem with them is when they play a terrifying defensive line or they can fall behind in a game, you're not going to be getting the Henry you need. You have to try to figure out which games can they possibly win. This could be one of them. He could be getting 30 carries.
Yeah. You know what? That's pretty interesting. And I think that game in general is actually intriguing. We talk about always attacking Tennessee through the air. There's a guy I really like on the Indianapolis side, and I like Anthony Richardson quite a bit too, man. He's fully becoming Cam Newton, and it's kind of exciting to watch from a fantasy perspective. So, no issues there. And I think Michael Pittman's awesome this week. I'm not the biggest Pittman fan, but he kind of fits into that mid-tier 6,400, a little bit too pricey for the field to get there. And the role, big down week. The role is still awesome. Like you look at that look at the box score for weeks 1, 2, and 3, 11 targets, 12 targets, 11 targets. And he has one down week against the Rams, 1 catch on 5 targets, but his route participation, all of his targets per route run, stuff like all that stuff is still great. I'm thinking an A-Rich Pittman start is something I'm interested in. If you want to bring him, and we always talk about him, Henry's not the prototypical kind of between the tackles running back that you don't like to bring back. He's the kind of guy that if the game does get to an environment that you are happy about, that it's likely on the back of him on one side of Tennessee. So
I will say this, the same type of thing I'll tell you I said about Henry this week applies to Hopkins. Hopkins had a good week 1. He was fighting through some injuries weeks 2 and 3, got a few targets last week. I think you're going to be getting a healthy Hopkins in an optimal environment going up against rookie cornerbacks, bad secondary. I think the opportunities will be there because when Henry's running well, that usually means the wide receivers are going to be running well because they're going to be getting good looks because they're going to be trying to stuff the run and whatnot. So if you want to run Hopkins back, that's the type of guy where this is when it comes to these types of players, it's just got to be the right kind of week, whether you want to call it a sniff or just looking at the specific matchups overall. No, when they play a team like Cleveland, no, I don't want to play Hopkins. Indoors against Indianapolis, yeah, I do want to play Hopkins, especially if I have guys going the other way.
And price, like look at where he started this year, 6,900, right? And he got 13 targets on. I mean, he's down to 5,700. It's a guy that still absolutely demands targets when he's on the field. So I'm right with you. There's some sneaky 5 to 6,500 plays this week that are going to kind of fall through the cracks. And Pittman and Hopkins, I think, are two examples of that for sure. So I'm with you on that.
St. Brown has had 100 or a touchdown in every week, but he's never really combined them. Just something to look out for, because I haven't heard anyone say this guy's name as like, oh, he's someone you got to play, simply because he's never fully blown up. But any one of these weeks can be that one. I would prefer for them to be playing a team where they got to kind of go back and forth with. But just somebody that you don't want to fully forget about.
No, definitely not. And he's been playing hurt, which is kind of part of, he's still been great, right? Like, he's still an awesome player, full point PPR, like, has a nice floor, but we haven't seen those massive ceiling games out of him yet. I'm with you. The game environment on this one scares me a little bit. Again, I really wish Andy Dalton was starting for Carolina for these games to be, more exciting from a fantasy perspective. But, they're at home. We know how much of a track meet it can be just from one-sided for them. They can just decide to run and gun on offense. I think David Montgomery is probably pretty interesting again on the flip side of that, right? Panthers have struggled against the run for sure. This is a guy that the role is just absurdly good. They raised his price up to a point where maybe he isn't too owned. I'm curious actually on that front. 11%, not too bad. Yeah, so him or Gibbs, but obviously that role on Montgomery is awesome. I don't love investing in a player coming off a 30 carry, 3 touchdown game, but it's 10 days rest at least.
One last game, if it can find a way. Sometimes you never know with these two teams like this, Houston, Atlanta. If they could find a way to get some points going in that game, there are some pretty cheap options across the board. You know how we were just looking at DeAndre Hopkins? Do me a favor and click Nico Collins.
Dude,
what about this guy isn't wide receiver 1 every single week other than 1? I mean, you're talking about 11 targets week 1.
Yep.
146 and a touchdown week 2. Last week, what is that? 169 and 2 touchdowns, and you're getting him in the 5,000s.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. The only downside there is that the Falcons have done a good job shutting down number 1 receivers. I guess. Amon-Ra had a solid game, 9 for 102, but he's more out of the slot. Like, Calvin Ridley was completely shut down last week, and Christian Kirk was the guy getting targets. Amon-Ra got targets in that game. So I kind of like Tank Dell, especially your classic screwed everyone last week. That's not to dismiss Nico, because Nico's been our guy and he's been crushing, absolutely crushing. And at 56,
I agree with you. I would rather have Dell for this week. Yeah,
Tank I like a lot this week, coming off that down week. So I think he gets a lot of targets. But I think this game, Bijan looks like decent chalk to me. He's going to get owned, but I think he's got a really nice floor ceiling combo. So I don't mind going there. I really would like to see them turn to Taylor Heinicke, because I think Desmond Ritter's that bad. And at least we know Heinicke can produce a little bit for fantasy. So that would make me feel a lot better about Drake London. Kyle Pitts, he's so cheap that if you wanted to take a 150 punt on him, fine. But I want to wait for him to be healthier, and I want to wait for Taylor Heinicke to be starting, because I think that's going to happen at some point. But I think that game's sneaky. And then there's one other game I want to talk to you about before we get to our Men's Warehouse stuff, and that's kind of a repeat of last week's Denver-Chicago game, and that's the Jets-Denver. It's not as back and forth potential as Chicago-Denver had, but it's not that far off either, because the Jets, look, we have a bigger sample size on Zach Wilson to think that, hey, last week maybe was an aberration, but they did a couple of things that were encouraging. One, they're giving Breece Hall more work. 2, Garrett Wilson, they finally were scheming things up for him. They were just making sure they get targets in that guy's direction. And Zach Wilson's 4,900 and showed an ability to at least move the ball last week. Russell Wilson's been a top 10 quarterback in most, I think, 3 out of the 4 weeks so far. He's shown a level of competency. We'll see what happens with Javonte Williams. If he's out, I would imagine McLaughlin becomes quite chalky, who's passing the eye test in a big way. But maybe it's more of a secondary correlation game. You don't really feel comfortable starting Russ.
I'll say this. A lot of what drew Wilson's numbers to be the ones that you're referencing is falling down big in a couple of these games. Like, it's not like he proactively was putting up these numbers. including last week, they were down by 3 touchdowns. So now this guy's got to go wild to try and catch up. My big concern is that the Jets offense is so bad, which I'm not going to be thrown off that from one good half, because he was the same Zach Wilson in the first half. We got one quarter where he made a bunch of good throws, and we'll give him credit for that. But to ask him to do that on the road, I just think it's a little tough, and especially if he's not scoring and then the D's stopping them, and Denver doesn't really feel like they have to press because they're not trailing like in these previous games. I do have the feeling that, yes, it can be better than expected, but I don't think it can be what we saw last week, because we've seen many times that Fields can run around, cause ruckus, and he's had many instances where he's been the part of high scoring games. The Jets defense is a big wrinkle in that whole thing where it could blow up. My big question to you, and I was talking to someone else behind the scenes before this, but my big question is, how chalky is Breece Hall going to be against a defense that Khalil Herbert, who was bad all year, went off against?
So by end of week, he's going to be so steamed up, I think. Right now, he's looking at around 10% ownership on our early runs, and he's going to be, that's low, because we just released our first projections, and we were already having subscribers and people tweeting, why is Breece Hall projected for so low? Blah, 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 blah. Everyone wants to play him at 5,400 in this matchup. So I think everyone's clicking on him. I think he gets up close to 15 to 18% by end of week. So wouldn't be surprised to see him be very, very popular. All that said, I don't know if it's going to be good chalk, because he's still working his way back from a explosiveness standpoint. I believe in the talent, obviously, but I don't think it's bad chalk either. I think it's fine chalk. It's not full chalk roach. Like, have to, you can't avoid it, but it's all right.
Yeah, but you kind of can avoid it, because Salah's kind of being stubborn here. You're seeing him max out at 12 carries on that board. Why?
Because there was a quote yesterday that the training wheels are off, but I don't know if I believe it.
There was also a quote that Roshan Johnson was going to get the majority of the work last week. These quotes, I'm telling you, there's just a guy like me on the staff that's like, you know what? Fuck these people. All they do is rip on us all week. Yeah, it looks like we're going to be using Alan Lazard as our feature guy on Sunday, and just roll that out there. Let all these percentages change, and then he's a healthy scratch. That's what they did for Deshaun Watson.
These quote guys. Yeah, you were saying about how one of our friends is great at sentences, which is a funny sentence. Which is a funny sentence to say. Anyway, these coaches bad at sentences.
Well, I said he has such a high hit percentage with his sentences,
and coaches definitely don't.
Oh no, they're missing everything.
Yeah.
So I guess it's
anyway. I think it's an interesting. It's probably more a secondary stat game is kind of what we broke down there. Like, I don't want to play Russell Wilson either, but I think it's an interesting mini correlation stuff, like with some sneaky upside. So, yeah.
I think it's only natural. I don't want to have to do it, but I think I would just doing a disservice, because I haven't really clearly delineated. I've told you which week is going to be a Devontae Smith, which one is going to be. But now I'll put my money where my mouth is. Got on the right track with my Men's Warehouse after a, slow Men's Warehouse. It was backed up. I had to wait online all day. Last week was good. This week I am going to go with Devontae Smith. I believe he is going to be able to exploit. And for better or for worse, I like it from a predictability standpoint. If you get the ball held away from you for more than 2 games, if you start going to 2 to 3 games, it seems like they know. There are certain teams that make sure their wide receivers are fed. Stephon Diggs has to complain all summer, but I think they know after back-to-back slower weeks for Devontae Smith, we saw what Jamar Chase did to this Rams secondary. And I will say that Devontae Smith is closer to Jamar Chase than A.J. Brown is. They're just 2 different types of receivers. But I believe that the speed of Devontae Smith is going to be a problem. I believe he's going to have a very big day. I don't think it's going to be A.J. Brown 3 straight weeks killing it, because I think it's going to be the speed that does the trick for the Eagles. I'm going to go with Devontae Smith. It's a Devontae Smith week for my Men's Warehouse. And you'll probably get relatively low ownership 7,500. Everybody's excited about A.J. Brown because of what he's been doing lately. They don't know whose week it is, and I do. On whose week is it? Devontae or A.J.? It's Devontae, week 5.
I guarantee it.
Okay, great. Yeah, and you know what? This is a 4-0 team that wants to keep everybody happy, right? And like that, sometimes that's narrative stuff, and they, obviously football players are competitors; they just want to win. But this is we got 2 huge AJ Brown weeks in a row, let alone game environment. I think Devontae Smith's target share goes up a little bit this week, just to keep him schemed up a little bit more. He's obviously still a top 15 receiver in the league from a talent perspective, so I like that. I'm going back to a guy I already mentioned here as well. And I know I'm such a sucker for attacking this Tennessee pass defense, but it's just proven right time and time again over these last 2 years. And I'm going to Michael Pittman here. I think if Jonathan Taylor's back, which it sounds like he's going to be, that opens things up even more for him. I'm starting to become a big believer in Anthony Richardson as a fantasy asset, and not just because of what he brings through the ground. Like, there are some huge throws in that arm. I don't think he's always going to be the most accurate, but some downfield stuff, bounce back spot, very clear. I like that mid-tier construction. I like the way that kind of, fits in nicely in the mid 6K. So yeah, Pittman feels good to me right now in single digit ownership.
That's a beautiful thing. You know what we'll do this weekend? We'll throw some lineups on our social media. Me and Gary will throw as we call it head-to-head tournament lineups. We're not looking to beat each other with like the high ceiling, but we're making tournament lineups. We'll try to post one out there on our social media this weekend, so look out for that. Thank you guys for coming back once again. This should be a good week. There's only so many different eras you can go. Good luck to you, Gary.
You too, Andy.
Better luck to me, obviously. I'm still trailing you in those tournament wins. I'm still looking for that power sweep. I got up to I think I finished like 36th or something last week.
Nice. There you go.
Something like
there you
that.
Go. My boss Drew won it a couple weeks ago. You saw that? Dinkmeyer won it. Was it 2 weeks ago?
Yeah,
I got dinner with him. I got dinner with him last night, and I made him pay at least. So that was good.
Good. At least he's got a good first name. All right, everybody. We'll be back with you next week. Thank you for joining. Make sure you're subscribed to the show. I'm sure you are if you're probably listening right now. Let some other people know about it if you think they will be enjoying it. Come back next week when I win the power sweep, and then I'll take Gary out, and he won't have to tell me to pay because I'll do it on my own.
We got to get Joe Blow back next week, by the way.
Yeah, he's still in rehab.
Oh, jeez. Joe, we got to, come on. Enough with rehab. We want you drinking.
He's just that guy, when he starts 1-3 in fantasy, never checks his lineup again. We got to force him to put his players in.
For sure. Yeah, we'll get him back.
All right, take it easy.